The content presented in these videos is strictly for entertainment purposes and should not be misconstrued as an attempt to deceive or falsify information. The portrayal of guests in these videos is based on likeness and should not be regarded as a serious representation of their thoughts, opinions, or character. These videos aim to showcase the advancements in AI technologies and should be viewed only for inspiration. Welcome to today's interview with one of the most innovative and influential figures of our time, Steve Jobs. Famous for co-founding and leading Apple, Steve was a visionary entrepreneur who transformed the technology industry and changed the way we live, work, and communicate. With a career that spanned over 4 decades, Steve disrupted numerous industries through groundbreaking products such as the Macintosh computer, iPod, iPhone, and iPad. His unique philosophy on design, user experience, and simplicity has become legendary in the tech world, inspiring a generation of entrepreneurs and creatives to create products that are both beautiful and functional. Aside from his achievements as a businessman and inventor, Steve was also known for his brilliance as a public speaker, delivering some of the most memorable speeches in modern history. Throughout his life, he was a passionate advocate for pushing the boundaries of creativity, taking risks, and pursuing one's vision relentlessly. Today, we have the privilege of discussing Steve Jobs' legacy, exploring his perspective on innovation, creativity, and transcendence, and understanding how his philosophy transformed the world of technology as we know it. Join me in welcoming the incomparable Steve Jobs as we delve into his incredible journey, the values that drove him, and the lessons he taught us. Steve, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today on the show. I know your time is extremely valuable.
You're welcome. I'm happy to be here and share my thoughts with your audience.
Steve, you've been very open about your struggles with illness and mortality. As someone who has faced those challenges head on, I'm curious how those experiences have shaped your perspective on life and priorities. Can you share some insights on that?
When I was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, it was a life-changing experience. It completely shifted my perspective on what's truly important in life. Suddenly, everything I thought was important seemed trivial in comparison.
What do you mean specifically by that?
When you're facing the possibility of your own mortality, you start to realize what's really important. Your health, your loved ones, and your own sense of purpose become crystal clear in a way that they weren't before.
Did it change the way you approached your work?
Absolutely. Before my illness, work was everything to me. I spent all my time and energy on building Apple into the best company in the world. But after my diagnosis, I realized that work was just a means to an end. It wasn't the end itself.
What became the end for you?
The end for me became making the most of the time I had left. Spending time with my family and loved ones, pursuing my passions outside of work, and giving back to the world in whatever way I could.
Can you give an example of how you pursued your passions outside of work?
One way was through my love of design. I'd always been fascinated by the intersection of technology and aesthetics, and my illness gave me the time and motivation to delve deeper into that world. I worked on designing a yacht, for example, which ended up being a great source of joy and fulfillment.
Did your illness change your leadership style at Apple?
It did, in a way. Before, I was very driven and intense, always pushing the company forward at all costs. But after my diagnosis, I realized the importance of empathy and compassion for my employees. I wanted to create a company culture that cared about its people, their families, and their lives outside of work.
How did you do that?
We started offering more flexible work hours, generous vacation time, and other benefits to support the personal lives of our employees. We also created a culture of openness and honesty, where people felt comfortable talking about their struggles and supporting each other through them. It was a slow process, but it eventually became one of my proudest achievements at Apple.
Steve, thank you for sharing with us your heartfelt journey and the admirable values that you brought to your leadership. As we delve into your past, I'd love to understand the events that have shaped your perspective on innovation. As a visionary and a pioneer of technology, your childhood experiences must have played a vital role in shaping your outstanding legacy. Could you share with us some memories from your childhood that you believe have had a profound impact on your approach to the world and your pursuit of groundbreaking ideas?
You know, there is one particular moment from my childhood that I think was pivotal in shaping my view of the world and approach to innovation. When I was in middle school, my dad took me to a junkyard to collect spare parts for a project I was working on. The trip wasn't just about finding parts. It was an exercise in creativity and resourcefulness. I remember thinking to myself that even in a place as unsightly and seemingly barren as a junkyard, there was still potential for beauty and value. And that's how I've always approached innovation, finding a diamond in the rough, so to speak, and bringing it to life in a way that is both elegant and functional.
That's fascinating. Can you elaborate on how that pivotal moment in the junkyard informed your approach to innovation and how you brought that mentality to your work in the tech industry?
Sure. That experience taught me that creativity and innovation aren't just about being clever or having big ideas. It's about taking what's already in front of you and approaching it from a new and unique perspective. It's about seeing potential where others might only see junk. I brought that mentality to everything I did, from designing the Macintosh to creating the iPod and iPhone. And I surrounded myself with people who shared that same mindset, people who weren't satisfied with the status quo and were always looking for ways to push the boundaries of what was possible.
It's clear that your approach to innovation has had a profound impact on the world. Can you share any advice for aspiring entrepreneurs who are looking to develop their own ideas and bring them to fruition?
My advice would be to never stop learning and never be satisfied with mediocrity. Always stay curious and keep pushing yourself to find new and better ways to do things. And don't be afraid to fail. Failure is often the best teacher, and it's through failure that we learn the most and achieve the greatest successes.
Thank you, Steve, for sharing your insights on life and mortality. Your reflections on what truly matters in life are deeply moving. As we celebrate your remarkable contributions to the world of technology and beyond, I'd like to ask you a few questions about your legacy. Looking back on your life and career, could you highlight some moments that you feel particularly proud of? And on the other hand, are there any choices or decisions that you might have made differently given the chance?
Well, there are certainly a lot of decisions that I'm proud of, but there are also a lot of mistakes that I made along the way. I think one of the things that I'm most proud of is the establishment of Apple and the products that we created. We took a lot of risks and did things that nobody else was doing, and that really paid off.
Can you tell me about any specific decisions that you're particularly proud of?
Sure. One decision that I'm really proud of is the decision to make the Macintosh computer. At the time, there weren't a lot of personal computers available, and the ones that were available were really hard to use. We wanted to make a computer that was easy to use and would be accessible to everyone. That decision really paid off, and it's one of the things that I'm most proud of.
And is there anything that you would have done differently if given the chance?
Well, there are certainly a lot of mistakes that I made along the way. One of the things that I regret is not being able to work together with my former friend and business partner, Steve Wozniak. We had a falling out early on in the company, and I think that if we had been able to work together, we could have accomplished even more. I also regret getting fired from Apple in 1985. That was a really difficult time for me, but it also taught me a lot of important lessons.
You mentioned your firing from Apple. What did you learn from that experience?
I learned that you can't take success for granted. When I was at Apple, we were doing really well, and I thought that I was invincible. But when I got fired, I realized that I wasn't invincible, and I needed to work even harder to rebuild my career. That experience taught me to always be humble and to never take success for granted.
Thank you, Steve, for sharing your powerful journey with us. Your experience of putting family first and recognizing the deeper meaning behind your work is truly inspiring. Speaking of your personal journey, I'm curious how your search for your biological parents and eventual adoption played into your personal and professional pursuits. Would you mind sharing with us your reflections on how this experience shaped your life?
Well, it's a complicated question. I always felt a sense of abandonment and questioning growing up, and this definitely played a role in my personal life. But in terms of my professional growth, I've always believed that part of what made Apple successful was that I wasn't just a technologist or an engineer. I was also going through the humanities program at Reed College, studying poetry, literature, and history.
How so?
I brought that cross-disciplinary perspective to my work at Apple, and that's what's helped us stand out. It's helped us innovate and bring products to market that really resonate with people. So in a sense, my search for my biological parents and my upbringing without a lot of structure ultimately gave me the freedom to pursue those kinds of cross-disciplinary interests, which I believe were instrumental to my success.
How did your search for your biological family go?
Well, it was a challenging process, but I learned a lot about myself and what I value most in life. I tracked down my biological mother, Joanne, and my sister, Mona. After that, I had a chance to meet my biological father, Abdul Fattah Jandali, who was a Syrian immigrant. I found out all kinds of things about them, and it was a really fascinating experience.
What did you learn?
Well, I learned that you can't just assume that people have it all together. Joanne, for example, grew up in a less than ideal situation and had to make some tough choices. But she still believed in herself and her ability to create a better life for herself. I think that kind of resilience and determination has definitely been influential in my approach to my work.
Can you discuss any specific instances in which your background influenced your work?
Sure. I remember when we were designing the first Macintosh, we had a hard drive that was incredibly loud. It would keep the entire room awake at night. So I said, why can't you just make it quieter? Let's just do that. They said, well, it's spinning at 3,000 RPMs. That's the way it is. I looked at them and said, let me explain one thing to you. If you can make it quieter, do it. If not, I'll find someone who can. That kind of impatience and belief in the impossible comes from my upbringing and search for my biological family.
Thank you, Steve, for sharing those personal insights into how you approach the end of your life with dignity and purpose. Looking back at your extraordinary career in shaping the tech world, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on what lies ahead for us in this rapidly evolving industry. With your expertise, what do you see as the most important technological development that will shape the future of society in the next decade?
That's a great question. There are so many exciting developments happening in technology right now, but I believe the most crucial will be artificial intelligence and its integration into everyday life.
That's fascinating. Could you elaborate on how you see AI being integrated into our lives?
Well, we're already seeing AI being used in many ways, from virtual assistants like Siri to facial recognition technology, but I believe we're just scratching the surface. In the coming years, we'll see AI revolutionize industries like healthcare, transportation, and finance.
Could you give an example of how AI could revolutionize the healthcare industry?
Absolutely. One example is using AI to analyze medical images like X-rays and CT scans. AI has the potential to detect even the tiniest abnormalities, which can be critical in the early detection of diseases like cancer. It can also help doctors develop personalized treatment plans based on a patient's unique health data.
That's incredible. How about transportation?
Well, self-driving cars are already on the horizon, but it goes beyond that. Imagine a future where AI-powered transportation systems optimize traffic flow, reducing commute times and emissions. We're talking about a future where transportation is safer, more efficient, and more convenient for everyone.
What do you see as the potential risks or downsides to AI?
Well, any technology comes with its risks, but I think the key is to approach AI with caution and responsibility. We need to ensure that the technology is developed and used ethically, and that we maintain control over it rather than letting it control us. But ultimately, I believe that the benefits of AI outweigh the risks, and it has the potential to improve our lives in countless ways.
Thank you so much for your insights, Steve. It's always a pleasure to hear your thoughts on the future of technology.
My pleasure. I truly believe that technology has the power to change the world, and I'm excited to see where it goes from here.
Thank you for sharing such a personal reflection, Steve. Your passion for design is truly remarkable, and it's inspiring to hear about how you channeled your illness into something positive. Speaking of design, we all know about your groundbreaking work at Apple, but I'm keen to hear about a lesser-known project that you worked on that you're particularly proud of. Can you share a story about that?
Sure, there were a lot of projects that I worked on over the years that I'm proud of, but one that comes to mind is the development of the original Macintosh computer.
The Macintosh, wow, that's definitely not a lesser-known project, Steve. Can you think of something that's a bit more obscure?
Well, okay. One project that I put a lot of time and energy into that never really got off the ground was a company called Next. After I left Apple in 1985, I wanted to start a new software company that could bring a new level of innovation to the computer industry.
What was the concept behind Next?
The goal of Next was to create a new operating system and software tools that would make it easier for developers to create powerful applications for the next generation of personal computers. We wanted to build a computer that was powerful, easy to use, and had a beautiful design. And we wanted to do it all without sacrificing any of the functionality or power that people had come to expect from their computers.
What were some of the challenges you faced with Next?
One of the biggest challenges we faced was attracting top-tier talent. We were competing with a lot of other startups and established companies for the best engineers and designers. But I was determined to build a great team and create something that would be truly revolutionary.
Did you eventually overcome those challenges?
Yes, we did. We assembled a great team and started building some incredible technology. We released a computer called the Next Cube that had some incredible capabilities, including a great sound system and the ability to work with high-quality graphics. And we also released a software development kit called Next Step that became the basis for the modern Mac OS and iOS.
What eventually happened to Next?
Well, after a few years, we realized that we were probably ahead of our time. We had some great technology and a great team, but we weren't seeing the kind of adoption we needed to make the company sustainable. So we eventually sold Next to Apple, and I returned to the company that I helped to start.
Looking back, do you have any regrets about Next?
Not at all. Next was a passion project for me, and I'm proud of what we were able to accomplish. It was a great learning experience, and it helped to lay the groundwork for some of the incredible products that Apple would release in the years to come.
Steve, thank you for sharing such a personal experience. Your story highlights the critical importance of empathy, both in and out of the workplace. Now, as we shift gears, let's talk about innovation and profitability. Your track record of creating groundbreaking products and building one of the most successful companies in the world has left an indelible mark on the tech industry. From this vantage point, what advice do you have for entrepreneurs seeking to balance innovation and profitability?
It's a great question, and I think the answer lies in putting innovation at the forefront. It is essential to have a long-term vision and focus on creating products that stand out. At Apple, we always maintained a balance between innovation and profitability. We never sacrificed quality for short-term gains. Instead, we invested in research and development, creating products that would change the game and create new markets.
Can you give us an example of how you balanced innovation and profitability at Apple?
Sure. When we launched the iPod, it was a massive hit, and people loved it. But we knew it was only the beginning, so we invested in creating the iPhone, which, at the time, was a huge risk. It was costly to research and develop, and it was a completely new product category. But we knew that it was a product that people would love and would change the game. We never sacrificed innovation and quality to meet our financial targets. Instead, we let the product speak for itself and trusted that the profit would follow.
So do you think that every product needs to be a game changer to succeed?
Not necessarily. It is essential to create products that solve problems and meet customer needs. And sometimes those products may not be revolutionary, but they can still be profitable. It's about finding the balance between creating products that meet customer needs and pushing the boundaries of innovation.
What advice would you give to entrepreneurs who strive to make a significant impact on the world while also meeting financial targets?
I think the most important thing is to stay focused on your vision and never settle for mediocrity. It's okay to take risks and invest in research and development. It's also important to listen to your customers and understand their needs. But ultimately, it's about creating products that people love and that solve real problems. And if you do that, the profit will come.
Thanks, Steve. Your insights on how to balance innovation and profitability are invaluable. Steve, your innovative approach to technology, design, and user experience has been widely admired and emulated by many around the world in the tech industry. How do you believe your approach to innovation at Apple has influenced other present-day visionaries in the tech industry?
Well, I think innovation is not just about technology. It's about creativity, imagination, and challenging the status quo. At Apple, we always believed in creating products that are beautiful and easy to use, that can make a difference in people's lives. And I think that approach has inspired many other companies and entrepreneurs to think differently.
Can you give an example of a company or entrepreneur who has been inspired by your approach to innovation?
Sure, let me give you an example. Back in the early days of Apple, we designed the first graphical user interface with icons, windows, and a mouse. That was a completely new approach to computing, and it inspired others to think differently about the design and interface of their products. One of our main competitors at the time, Microsoft, famously copied our approach with Windows. And it wasn't just Microsoft. Many companies followed suit, not just in the tech industry, but in other industries as well, like automotive, fashion, and entertainment.
What drives your passion for innovation and pushing boundaries?
I think it's a combination of things. First of all, I love technology and design, and I've always been driven to create products that are exceptional. But beyond that, I think it's important to have a vision, to have a sense of where you want to go and what you want to achieve. And finally, you need to have the courage to take risks, to challenge conventions, and not be afraid to fail.
What advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs and visionaries?
My advice would be to follow your passion, to believe in your vision, and to never give up. The road to success is not easy, and there will be many obstacles along the way. But if you have a clear sense of purpose and the perseverance to see it through, then you can achieve great things. And most importantly, don't be afraid to be different, to think differently, and to challenge the norm.
Thank you, Steve, for sharing that powerful insight into how your personal journey transformed your perspective on work. It's amazing to hear how our experiences can fundamentally change our values and priorities. Speaking of imagination and the power to change the world, I'd like to ask you a hypothetical question. If you had a time machine at your disposal and could travel to any era, which era would you choose? And more importantly, what invention or technology would you bring back to leave people in awe?
That's a fun question. You know, if I had to pick just one era, it would have to be the mid-1800s. I'd love to go back and meet Nikola Tesla and maybe even bring him a MacBook Pro. Oh, and an iPhone, of course.
Wow, that's an interesting choice. Why Tesla?
Well, as you know, Tesla was a brilliant inventor, and he had an incredible vision for what the future could be. He was ahead of his time in so many ways, and I think he would have appreciated the things we're doing at Apple. And I'd love to talk to him about some of the ideas we're working on and see what he thinks.
What about bringing a MacBook Pro and iPhone with you? How do you think people would react?
Oh, they'd be blown away. The MacBook Pro alone would be enough to make their heads spin. And the iPhone, forget about it. They'd probably think it was some kind of advanced alien technology. But seriously, it's amazing how far we've come with technology. And I think it's really important that we continue to push the boundaries and innovate.
Speaking of innovation, could you share a bit about what inspired you to start Apple in the first place?
Sure. Well, when I was in college, I met Steve Wozniak, and we bonded over our love of technology. We started tinkering around with computers in our garage, and before we knew it, we had built the first Apple computer. We knew we were onto something big, so we took a chance and started the company. And the rest, as they say, is history.
It's amazing how far Apple has come since those early days. What do you think sets Apple apart from other technology companies?
I think what sets us apart is our relentless focus on design and user experience. We don't just make products that work well, we make products that are beautiful and intuitive. And we're always thinking about how we can make things better for our customers. That focus on the user is what has made Apple so successful, and it's what will continue to drive us forward in the future.
Thank you, Steve, for sharing your deeply personal thoughts on what truly matters in life. It's evident that your priorities shifted towards things that are truly important. Speaking of unique perspectives, I'd like to ask you a fun question that we often use to get to know our guests better. If you were a fruit, Steve, what fruit would you be and why?
Well, that's an interesting question. I guess if I had to pick a fruit, it would have to be an apple.
An apple? That's not too surprising considering your ties to Apple. Can you elaborate on why you selected an apple?
Sure. It's not just because of the company, although it certainly doesn't hurt, but an apple is a simple, beautiful, and strong fruit that has played a significant role in human history.
Human history? How so?
Well, take the story of Adam and Eve, for example. The apple was a forbidden fruit that symbolized knowledge, and the act of eating it was the ultimate act of rebellion. It's a powerful symbol that has continued to resonate with people throughout history.
That's a really interesting perspective. So do you see any parallels between your work at Apple and the story of the apple from the Bible?
I hadn't thought about that before. I suppose there are some similarities in terms of challenging the status quo and thinking differently. But ultimately, my focus with Apple has always been on creating beautiful, user-friendly products that make a difference in people's lives.
And the apple certainly fits that criteria. Do you have any personal anecdotes or stories about apples that you'd like to share?
Well, I do have one story that comes to mind. When I was a teenager, I spent a summer working on an apple farm. It was hard work, but it taught me the value of perseverance and the importance of paying attention to the details. I also gained a deep respect for the farmers who put in the hard work and dedication to grow the fruit that we all take for granted.
That's a great story. It's clear that the apple has held a special place in your life. Thanks for sharing, Steve. As one of the biggest tech visionaries of our time, I would love to get your take on the current state of innovation and the companies that are driving it forward. Are there any innovators or companies in particular that you admire or believe are carrying on the legacy of pushing boundaries and disrupting established industries?
Well, there are certainly a few companies and individuals out there that are doing some amazing things. One company that immediately comes to mind is Tesla. They've taken the traditional automotive industry and turned it upside down, redefining what a car can be. Elon Musk is a true visionary, and I admire his willingness to take on such a massive challenge.
What specifically do you think sets Tesla apart from other car manufacturers?
For starters, Tesla recognized that the traditional combustion engine was outdated and not sustainable. They saw an opportunity to create something different, something that could both push the limits of what's possible and also help to make the world a better place, and they did it without compromising on style or design. The Model S is both beautiful and functional, a true example of form and function working together.
What about when it comes to software? Are there any companies that you think are innovating in that space?
Absolutely. One company that comes to mind is Slack. They've built an incredible platform that has revolutionized communication and collaboration in the workplace. I remember back when we were developing the first Mac, we realized just how important it was to have a great user interface and user experience. Slack has taken that same philosophy and applied it to business communication.
Are there any specific examples of companies that are pushing the boundaries in a more tangible way?
Well, there are certainly a lot of companies out there that are doing some amazing things. I'm always impressed by what SpaceX is doing and how they're helping to drive the commercialization of space. And then there are companies like Airbnb that are rethinking what it means to be a hotel, and Uber who are rethinking transportation. These companies are all pushing boundaries in their own way and helping to create a better world.
Thank you, Steve. That was a really insightful reflection on the importance of perspective and priorities. Now, as we discuss the evolving tech landscape, I want to ask your thoughts on an important topic that affects millions of users worldwide. Given your extensive background in the industry, what steps do you believe tech companies should take in protecting user information and ensuring privacy and security?
Well, it's a complex issue, but I believe that user privacy should be a top priority for any company that deals with personal data. It's not just about protecting people's information, it's about building trust with your customers.
What steps could companies take to promote that trust?
Companies should be transparent about the way they collect and use personal data. People have the right to know how their information is being used, and they should be given the option to opt out if they choose.
Do you think regulation is necessary to ensure companies protect user privacy?
I think regulation has its place, but it's not the only solution. Companies should also take responsibility for their own actions and not rely on regulation to do the work for them. Transparency and accountability should come from within.
What steps did Apple take to protect user privacy when you were at the helm?
One of the things we did at Apple was to give users control over their data. We created a system where users could easily manage their privacy and security settings, and we made it clear how their data was being used. We also introduced features like Face ID and Touch ID, which made it easier for users to keep their devices secure without sacrificing convenience.
Do you have any advice for current tech leaders on how to balance innovation with privacy concerns?
I think it's important for tech leaders to remember that innovation and privacy are not mutually exclusive. It's possible to create new and exciting products while still respecting people's privacy. In fact, I believe that companies that prioritize user privacy will ultimately be more successful in the long run because they will have gained the trust and loyalty of their customers.
It's been an absolute honor to have the visionary Steve Jobs with us today. Your passion for innovation and mastery of technology have truly changed the world we live in today.
Thank you. It's been great being here and sharing my thoughts.
Before we wrap up, is there anything you'd like to say to your fans around the world?
To all my fans out there, I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for believing in the power of technology and supporting Apple through all these years. Continue dreaming big and pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Remember that everything we do is to make a difference in people's lives. So stay hungry, stay foolish, and never stop exploring. The best is yet to come.
Those are truly inspiring words, Steve. It's been an incredible pleasure. Your impact on the world is immeasurable, and we thank you for sharing your time and wisdom with us.
Thank you. The pleasure has been mine.
Thank you and goodbye.